Kristi here, and I am so excited to be together again cooking in the kitchen. Today we are learning how to make mini apple pies. It's fall right now, and with a few fall flavors like apples and cinnamon and even some graham crackers, we are able to make ourselves a mini pie. We're gonna have fun making this together today, and I'm so glad you're here. Now, the first step to cooking and working in the kitchen is to wash our hands. While I wash my hands with soap and warm water for at least 20 seconds, let's go over the ingredients and supplies that you'll need to cook along today. The ingredients you need are 1 apple, 2 graham crackers, 2 teaspoons of maple syrup, 1 tablespoon coconut or grapeseed oil, 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon sugar. The supplies you need are a cutting board, baking sheet, oven mitts for safety, 2 small ramekins or coffee mugs that are oven safe, a small mixing bowl, a knife, 1 spoon, half a tablespoon, 1 teaspoon, and 1/4 teaspoon. Okay, great. Our hands are clean and we've gathered our ingredients and supplies, so let's get started making these mini apple pies. The thing I love about this recipe is that it only makes 2 small little apple pies, so this is the perfect recipe that you can make for yourself or maybe a friend or a family member. The very first step is gonna be to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. That's what we're gonna cook these on today, so I'm gonna preheat my oven to 400 degrees. All right, while the oven is preheating, let's get started making these. First thing we're gonna do is gonna take our apple. Now, my apple has already been rinsed and dried, so if you have not done that yet, you're just gonna wanna make sure you rinse off your apple, dry it with a paper towel. That way we're working with a clean apple. And we need to cut this into slices and then we're gonna dice it. So I'll show you how I slice my apple. If you have a different way and you feel comfortable, then you can just cut it however. Just make sure that you get some slices because then we're gonna dice it up. So how I do this is, I'm just gonna hold one side and I'm gonna cut like a little square around the core. So I'm actually just gonna make a couple little indents and turn it just so I can see where I want to cut it around the core, and that makes life just a little bit easier. So once I have my little grid here, I'm just going to cut the sides off. And I'm using a butter knife just for safety. If you're comfortable using a sharper knife, go ahead. I just wanna use what a lot of people have in their house and they can try and use. So I cut one side off and then we're just gonna cut all the 3 other sides. Okay, set the core aside, we're not gonna use that. So now we have these kind of big chunks of apples, and mine is a really juicy apple, which is exciting. So now I'm just gonna cut it into strips, and it doesn't have to be perfect because we're just gonna then cut it into little chunks. So just cutting some strips of apples. All right, now we have apple slices. So from here, we're just gonna cut little chunks because we need a diced apple, 1 diced apple. So if you have your strips, you're just going to make little bite-sized pieces. So I'm just taking each strip and just cutting little pieces off. And you can lay them down however it makes sense so that they're not rolling around. Just to the best of our ability, we need to get some chunks of apples for this mini apple pie recipe. Okay, so I have cut up this entire apple. We've turned it into little diced pieces. I'm gonna set my knife to the side because we won't need that again. And now you're gonna grab your small mixing bowl that we have ready. I'm just gonna scoop up these apples and put them in there. And then we're gonna start adding some ingredients, and then we bake them, and it starts to smell so good. Okay, so with our apples in our bowl, we're gonna start adding the ingredients. The first thing we're gonna add is 2 teaspoons of maple syrup. Now, I usually cook with real maple syrup. It has a richer flavor, so if you have real maple syrup on hand, that's gonna be what you're gonna wanna use. If not, and you have just kind of regular maple syrup, that'll work too. But we want 2 teaspoons. So we're gonna grab our little measuring teaspoon that says 1 and then TSP for teaspoon. And we're gonna need 2 of these, so I'm gonna fill it up twice. And just dump it right in over our apples. Okay, and we can set that aside. We won't use that measuring spoon again. Now we're gonna do our cinnamon and sugar. So first grab your cinnamon, and we're gonna need 1/4 teaspoon. So it's the smallest one, it's gonna say 1/4, and you're just gonna need 1 scoop of that and sprinkle it right over our apples. Okay, put that to the side. And then the same thing, the same teaspoon, 1/4, we're gonna do of our sugar. Now my sugar is like a darker color. Again, your sugar might be completely white, which is fine. As long as we're using a sugar, they may look a little bit different, but we need 1/4 teaspoon. Set that to the side. Okay. And now you're just gonna use your spoon that you might have, or I'm just gonna use another mixing spoon. We just need something to mix it around. So I'm gonna just mix this together, because this is kind of the inside of our apple pie. So grab your spoon, give it a mix, and then we're just gonna set it off to the side for a second because there's one more step before we need to put it in our little bowls. Let's talk about our bowls. I have these 2 little tiny oven-safe bowls. This is what you can use, or like we talked about in the beginning, you can use 2 coffee mugs. So if you don't have the little bowls and you have a coffee mug that's like ceramic or can go in the oven, feel free to use this. You don't have to have the tiny ones. So this is an option too. I just wanted to give you an option. But what I'm gonna do is I'm now gonna put coconut oil in here because we need to both grease the little bowls and have a little bit to go inside of our mixture. So take your 1/2 teaspoon, or sorry, 1/2 tablespoon, Tbsp. So this will be 1/2 tablespoon. And you are going to scoop out your coconut oil and just put it in one bowl. And then 1/2 tablespoon into our other bowl. Okay. Now, coconut oil usually is gonna be kind of a little bit hard in its jar. That's why I need to melt this in the microwave for 20 seconds. If your coconut oil happens to be completely liquid, or if you're using a grapeseed oil, which is also both just kind of a neutral flavor, it doesn't have a lot of flavor, you're not gonna have to do this step. But if you are using coconut oil and it's a little bit kind of chunky like mine is, we need to melt it before we start mixing it together. So taking these 2 bowls of coconut oil and we're gonna microwave it for 20 seconds and then I'll be right back. All right, so our coconut oil is nice and melted, and what we're actually gonna do with this is it serves 2 purposes. We're gonna pour it into our mixture to kind of help put everything together, but we're also using it to grease the inside of whatever you're cooking in, because if we don't have a little bit of oil in there, what we make is gonna stick to our bowl. So if you kind of just take your melted oil and just give it a swirl, we're killing 2 tasks here with 1 coconut oil. All right, so I swirled it around. Take your bowl again, and you're just going to now dump that in to our apples. All right, grab your spoon again and just give this a final mix. And with the cinnamon and the apples, it smells really good. It's gonna smell even better when it's done. Okay, so this is mixed. I'm just gonna set this to the side for a second. Now you're gonna wanna grab your baking sheet, put it in front of you, and then put the 2 little bowls that you are going to cook in right on top. We're using a baking sheet just to help us put it in the oven so it doesn't tip over. It's just gonna cook right on this baking sheet. It makes life a little bit easier. So grab your graham cracker and break it in half. This is gonna serve as like the crust. So normally an apple pie is gonna be inside of a crust. We're using graham crackers. So you're just going to kind of break it up and put it inside of your bowl or your coffee mug. And then I just take my spoon and I kind of crush it up in the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to kind of cover the bottom of your bowl or your mug. And it's kind of fun to crush up a graham cracker. Okay, so you can kind of see it's covering the bottom of the bowl. This is our crust, the bottom anyways. Now we're just gonna take our bowl and we're going to do an even mixture of our amazing apple pie filling in both of the bowls. So it's usually about 4 or 5 scoops into each one, but as long as it's even, that's what we're looking for. And right on top of the graham cracker. Okay, and then we'll set that aside. If any of it falls, just pop it in there because our hands are clean. All right, now you have 1 more graham cracker, right? So take that graham cracker, break it in half again, and we're just gonna kind of crunch it up, break it up into little pieces, and it's gonna become the top of our apple pie. So instead of using a pie crust, we're using graham cracker. And you kind of want it to cover it. This is also why the baking sheet comes in handy, because you can kind of see when you crunch up a graham cracker, it gets everywhere, which is okay. I always say cooking can be messy, and that is okay. But you just kind of want to crunch it up to where you have this awesome little topping. So same thing on the other side, kind of getting these chunks of graham crackers. And if you're using a coffee mug because you don't have these little bowls, it's probably just gonna fill it up about halfway. It won't be all the way to the top of your coffee mug because it's a lot deeper. So just know that if that happens, that is completely normal. All right, these are ready to go in the oven. We are gonna cook them for 20 minutes. So as soon as I pop these in the oven, I'm gonna set a 20-minute timer, and then we'll talk about what happens next when it's ready, when it's all done cooking. So let's pop it in. All right, my friends, our 20-minute timer just went off. So now we get to get these mini apple pies out of the oven. Step 1, when we get to the oven, is make sure you turn your oven off. So that's very important. I like to turn my oven off before I even open the door. So turn your oven off, and we're gonna put our oven mitts on for safety, and we are going to take them out carefully and bring them back and set them on our counter to cool for 10 minutes. The pan is gonna be very hot, the little bowls are gonna be very hot, so we don't wanna touch any of that for at least 10 minutes, so we need to let them cool. I'm gonna take them out. And here we have it. These have cooled for 10 minutes and our mini apple pies are done and they smell delicious. I do hope you try to give these a try or try and make them again. And when you do, let me know how it goes. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions. You can also email me a picture of what you created. You can find my email on my YouTube channel, but I love to see what you're making and maybe we'll even show it on next week's episode. Now, speaking of next week's episode, we are learning how to make a tropical breakfast smoothie. This is a great breakfast you can learn to make all on your own. It's delicious, good for you, and only has a few ingredients. In order to make these yummy breakfast smoothies, these are the ingredients you'll need to have in your kitchen for next week. 1 banana, half a cup of frozen pineapple, half a cup of frozen mango, half a cup of orange juice, 2/3 cup water, and 2/3 cup ice. Well, friends, our time together today is almost over. I hope you've enjoyed making these mini apple pies as much as I have, and I already can't wait to cook together again next time. But before you say goodbye to this episode, make sure to click subscribe if you haven't already. You just have to click the little picture of me in the corner. That way you don't miss next week's episode, and I'll see you then. Bye, friends.